All right, friends. Good morning. Thank you for being here. This is our seventh session of our Business Mastermind in 2022. And I am really happy to be working with you and happy to jump into today's topic, which is how to increase your volunteer support. Generally something that everybody would like. There are a few communities where people have reversed and flipped the 80-20 law, that they actually have 80% of their people involved. I think in today's world, because people are suffering from pandemic fatigue and political fatigue and economic fatigue, I think we have to consider that when we look at where we are today versus where our communities might have been 3 years ago even, because people have been through a lot and people are hesitant to spend more time with others than they need to. They're hesitant about where they put their time, and they quite frankly are tired and suffering from some level of exhaustion. A lot of people, not all people, but a lot of people. So I first want to start by saying, if you have a decent band of volunteers working with you, that's a really good sign. It may not be all the volunteers that you want right now, but if you can say, we have a pretty solid core of volunteers, considering the world we live in today and all of the circumstances that are affecting that, that's a really important thing. That speaks to the quality of what you're providing and their commitment to your community. And if you happen to be here just starting out, just beginning, and maybe you're a small community and you're building your volunteer base, it's a good place to begin. It's time to begin. And I think the primary point I want to leave you with today, I'm telling you up front, it is, how do you think about volunteers? Why do we have them, and what is your job with them? So we'll start with these questions. First of all, why do people volunteer? What do they get out of volunteering? What do you want from your volunteers? And how do volunteers assure the future of your spiritual community? So if you have a piece of paper, I would love for you to write down these questions, because you'll have a different idea, I think, from the time you begin to the time that you end. And I want you to keep these questions in front of you. Why do people volunteer? What is the reason that they give their time? There are lots of options to that question. Some people volunteer because they don't have a lot to do. Other people volunteer because they feel like it's needed. There will be more than one answer to that question. What do they get out of volunteering is a really important thing for you to know. They're looking for something. And what do you want from them is equally important, because in order to get what you want, you have to communicate that. And finally, how do volunteers assure the future of their community? I hope that's given you time to write them down. I'll read them one more time quick. Why do people volunteer? What do they get out of volunteering? What do you want from volunteers? And how do volunteers assure the future of the community? So let's start here. Your volunteers are the backbone of your organization. They solve real problems, but they might not be the problems that you're thinking of. They solve real problems in the life of the people who are volunteering. Real serious problems. For example, volunteers are generally interactive with you, interactive with the community, interactive with the people who are engaged, other people who are engaged in your community, interactive with the community as a whole. So one of the biggest problems identified in our society today is loneliness. And loneliness doesn't always mean that you're not around people. You have a lot of people in your community who are coming in order to be around other people, but that does not stop them from being lonely. And we've all had those moments where we've been standing in the middle of a crowd and we're feeling lonely, even though, we're around a whole bunch of people. but we feel lonely. And the point here is, in order to combat loneliness, we have to get to know each other, have real conversation, interact around something that's important to us. So this solving of loneliness, this assisting, maybe not solving completely, but helping to address loneliness is not usually what we think about when we think about volunteers. When we think about volunteers, we think about jobs that need doing and how we save money in our organization and what happens when our volunteers step up and their commitment, their kind of buy-in to the community. But loneliness is one of the top reasons that people volunteer. Another reason that people volunteer is because they want to develop more life skills, especially your younger people. The younger people in your community will volunteer if you give them real life skill opportunities. So if they can say to someone on a job application, oh yeah, I worked at the church doing this. So, an example of this is, and a lot of us are parents, especially ministers, board directors, people like that, have kids, generally a little older kids, maybe high school or college. What can they do in your community that gives them life skills they can put on a job application? Can they do data entry? Can they do maintenance and lawn care? Can they pitch in and do platforming? What can they do? What can your young adults in your community do that you would feel good writing them a letter of recommendation saying, this person worked for me for a whole summer and did a great job doing whatever it is. It doesn't have to be young people. It can be moms who are going back into the workforce. It can be people who maybe for medical reasons have been out of work for a while. And this allows them to show that they have some activity. But you have many, many opportunities to give people life skill. It also can combat apathy and depression. And the reason it does that is because apathy is based in the belief that we can't do anything anyway. There's nothing I can do in the world. The world is a mess. There's nothing I can do to fix it. But if you involve volunteers in a way that says you are making a difference, whether that's working on a philanthropic effort, or it's just having them, for example, available at a greeting table for new people coming in, it gives them a chance to feel like they have some purpose in their community and that they're making a difference. When you smile at someone and someone smiles back, you know that you touched their life. So if you have folks who seem like they just can't do it, now is a really good time to bring them in. We talked at the beginning about some of the exhaustion that the world is experiencing right now. And what people don't recognize is that if they would get involved, they would feel more capable in the world. They would feel capable of making a difference, capable of being seen, capable of assisting. And that's a really, really important aspect of why volunteering is important in our communities beyond what we generally think about. Obviously, we fill the need. Our volunteers fill a need in the community. That's important. We know that those are positions we don't have to pay to fill. They're positions that they're jobs that need to be done, and they help out the community. That doing provides people with a sense of purpose, that their life has value on the planet, that they are making a difference. And I bring all of this to you because how we talk about volunteering is really important. So what's the most common way to get a volunteer? Guys, if we don't do this, this is going to go away. If we don't have somebody running fellowship is going away. If we don't have somebody mowing the lawn is going to look a mess and nobody new is going to come. If we don't, this horrible thing is going to happen. We need somebody to step up, make a difference. This is a very more common than I care to go into way of guilting and making people fearful. And so they step in because somebody had to do it. I'm going to go backwards. That's very different than what we just looked at. Hey, friends, if you're really looking to connect with people, jump in and be a volunteer. One of the best ways to get to know each other is to work together. Hey, friends, we have 3 or 4 jobs that are really around life skill development. So if you're a young person looking to develop some new skills that you might be able to take later out into the workforce, or that maybe might help you in your own ambitious future, I want to let you know, check in with me. I'll let you know what those jobs are, because they will take a little bit of training. We'll have to do a little bit of training, but that training will help you out in the world. And I'd love to put you or your kids into some program that allows them to develop life skills that we as a community can later use as the foundation for a letter of reference for them when they go out into the world. Hey, friends, are you feeling really yucky about life? You know, you feel like you can't make a difference. Well, you can make a difference. You can make a difference here. We have this thing that needs to be done, and it's incredibly important to our community. And it will give you that sense that you are doing something that has impact. You can have impact in our community, and you can have impact on people's life experiences by getting involved. You know, that photography position, coming in and taking those photographs, makes a bigger impact than you know. You have no idea how many times people go to our Facebook page and find out who we are, because we have volunteer photographers who are taking pictures all the time. So I want to thank you if you've done the job before. And I want to tell you, we have an open position right now, and this is a really important job in our community. So if you would like to step up, fantastic, come and talk to me. This is a very different approach than this. Very, very different approach, and really important, because what are we in the business of? We are in the business of ministry. And volunteers are part of our ministry, not because we need the position filled. That's secondary. Volunteering is part of our ministry because it ministers to people, because it changes their lives. And you need to know that as a minister, as a board president, as an LUT, if you think about your volunteering program as part of the way you minister, as part of the way you support people and address real problems in your community, you will talk differently about it. You will talk from that foundation. You'll talk like you talk about your belief system, like you talk about Fillmorian thoughts. You'll talk about it from a place of appreciation, and more than anything, you'll really value your volunteer program as something that you give to your community rather than something you take from your community. And that's a very, very different perspective. So what are the best ways to get volunteers? First of all, to change the way you think, so you talk differently. In addition to that, is volunteering fun in your community? What makes things fun for people? Things are fun for people if they interact with each other. Things are fun for people if they feel seen doing what they're doing. Things are fun for people if they enjoy the activities. So again, if we're talking about, I'm sorry, I just had a little screen glitch here happen. Let's see if I can figure out what that was about. Oh, I see. There we go. Somebody coming into the room. So if we're talking about volunteering and we're really thinking that this is a gift that we give, this opportunity is a gift that we give in our community, what happens when we are giving this gift and people are not responding? What happens if you can't get somebody to cover fellowship, or you can't get somebody to work in with the kids, or you can't get somebody to come in and fold something you need folded. This I'm directing specifically to our board presidents. There are going to be things, jobs in your community that volunteers don't want to do. And it's completely fine that they don't want to do them. The job still needs to be done. So as a board and as lead ministers, your job is to get those jobs done. It was a really big deal when I went to my board and said, I can't get volunteers for my youth community. I can't get volunteers to teach. It's time to hire teachers. It was a stop and pause moment. What do you mean we have to hire teachers? If you want to have a youth program, it's time to hire teachers. Here's what we're going to pay. Here's what we need. Here are the number of children that we have. Where will the revenue for that program come from? How can we resort our funds so that we have revenue each week to care for our children's program? One of the first things that we did was a community-wide fundraiser, not an event, but a fundraiser that was me, the minister, saying, right now, because right now, most of you are not interested in volunteering for the youth program. Right now, in order to do a really good job for our kids, we need to raise a little money so that we can hire people to come in and just think how amazing our youth program will be. And in that one Sunday, we raised enough money to hire 2 teachers for the full year, because people care about youth education, even if they don't want to be involved in it. They want your church to have youth education, and they want the kids to be well educated. So people whose children are grown, who are raising or playing with or enjoying their grandchildren, will contribute to a program for your kids. That is an easy program to get funded, because everybody cares that the kids have the appropriate people working with them. It's just one way of understanding that the same jobs have to be done. And if you can't get volunteers to do them, the answer is not always, well, I guess we can't have that program. If you don't want to volunteer, I guess we can't. Versus, how can we have this program? This is an important part of our community. Our children are really important for lots and lots of reasons. So if you think about your volunteer program as a way to save money rather than a way to build community, you have it back asswards. Your volunteer program is a service to your community. And when you set up jobs for volunteers, you want them to be things that people love doing. Or you want to look at how you can make it more fun. And you want to look at the jobs that need to be done and ask yourself, do we need this job? If we can't find a volunteer, how do we fund it? What other things can we do to fund this program? Make volunteering powerful. And what I mean by that is give power, empower your volunteer teams to make choices. We kind of have well, I need you to do this, and I want it done this way. This is how we do it. This is how we've always done it. And we definitely, all of us have, as leaders, have heard, but we always do it that way. And we hate that. But it's very easy for us to want our volunteers to do things a certain way. Our ushers should stand here. Our prayer chaplain should do this. Our platformers should speak from a certain place and speak on the things that we ask them to speak about. There is an opportunity for us to, especially with more experienced volunteers, to ask, how could we improve this program? This thing that you volunteer for, how could we improve it? How could we make it better? What's it like as you experience it? Some of the things that you'll find out are really interesting. We had at one point, we had all of our name tags for fellowship out on a table and someone who helped people find them. And it was a very important job because name tags matter to the community. That's how they get to know each other. In talking to a volunteer coordinator, she came up with a wonderful idea, which was just to hang ribbons on a wall and alphabetically sort all of the names. And people became responsible for putting their name tag on the wall and taking their name tag off the wall. And she got to stand and talk with friends and visit and say, good morning, so glad you're here, instead of having her face down on the table looking for name tags the whole time. So, this is a very simple shift, but it was a huge shift for the person having the experience. And I had no idea that the experience was kind of a bummer to her, that she was actually thinking about leaving the experience and not volunteering there anymore because she was so busy looking for name tags that she wasn't getting to talk to people. And that's why she volunteered in the first place. So talking to people about how they're experiencing their volunteer position and empowering them to contribute into the design of that work is really, really valuable in your ministry to your volunteers. Give your volunteers a sense that they have a purpose by telling them what it is that their job accomplishes. What is it? And this needs to happen a month after they've started, 3 months after they've started, 6 months and a year after they've started. Hey, you make such a difference here. You make a difference to me. Every time I come in and I see you just sitting here doing this job, I feel so good that it's getting done and so grateful for you because this serves our community. You make a difference to the people that interact with you. Like I was saying about the photographs, you have no idea what a difference you make by giving us these photographs we can paste on our social media. You really don't understand how many people come here because they see those pictures and they're curious about what we really do. So just thank you for showing up. Thanks for doing that. It's no fun to volunteer if your job doesn't mean anything. Who sorts your library, your giveaway library, your loaning library? How many people go in there and get books? What difference does it make besides being organized? You make things fun by helping people feel like they have a purpose, and also by creating community around volunteers. And this is a narrative from your platform. I want to speak today, as I do often, about our community of volunteers. Just that line says who they are, right? I want to speak about our community of volunteers. I want to take a moment, first of all, to say thank you. And I want you to just stand up for a minute. If you are volunteering and you have volunteered for anything in the last few months, stand up. Thank you all so much. I really appreciate what you do. This isn't about recognition. It looks to the rest of the community like it's recognition. It's about introducing all those people who are volunteering to one another. It's about making sure they know who that community of volunteers is, because the community of volunteers that's involved feels differently about the other people who are volunteering than they do the people who aren't. They now can look around and see, who can I rely on? Who will step up? Who's doing what? Who's really in this game with me? And they feel like they're part of a community within your community. So take the time, not every week, but often, to acknowledge those people, other people who are there, who are suffering from loneliness, who are maybe retired and feel like they're not seen anymore, who feel like nobody really cares because they can't contribute, will also notice that and will step up because they suddenly realize they could have purpose in their spiritual community and they could actually be seen as contributing. And because we deal with so many people who are in older generations, who are retired on fixed incomes, do limited numbers of things in their life, this sense that they can be seen and contribute in a way that the world still thinks they have purpose, that's a ministry of its own, isn't it? It ministers to people's hearts. People who have spent lifetimes contributing to the world, who feel unseen because their age no longer gives them purpose. How do you lose volunteers? It's pretty easy. First of all, provide no training for the job. Tell them there's a job to do. Tell them just go do it. Just let them go run wild. Don't visit with them and make it important enough. Giving them training can be as easy as pulling your entire cohort of volunteers together once a year and actually talking about the things that happen for all of your volunteers, what kind of a difference they make, having a smile on their face, the importance of getting to know each other and talking with each other and interacting, the value they provide by sharing their story with other people when they're in fellowship or they're together with other people at other events, sharing the fun of volunteering and the value of volunteering. This idea that the volunteer program is a ministry from the church into the community is something you want to teach your core of volunteers, because that's how they talk to other people about volunteering. It meets the needs of loneliness. It provides purpose. It helps people to develop skills. You want to teach your volunteers what you want them to say to other people, because they are going to be the ones that get people on their teams. So if you train your leadership program, your leadership people, your team leaders, this same way, they are going to get the idea that volunteering is a ministry out, not a giving in. The giving in is an outcome of the ministry out to the community. Give them no voice. We always do it this way. This is how we want you to do it. Fail to say thank you is probably the number one reason. When I started at my last church, we had almost no ministry, almost no volunteer ministry. And it was because nobody said thank you. Over and over and over, as I asked people to step up and actually talk to them about why they volunteered or why they didn't, I heard nobody ever says thank you around here. Nobody ever appreciates anything. Thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you. Every day, every time you see them, as often. You will never, ever wear them out on thank you. Thank them every time you can. Board presidents, start your meetings that way. Thank you again for being on the board. We recognize that you volunteer your time. Thank you for being here. You take on a real job, a very valuable and important job when you come here. Really important to say that. Ministers, really important to say it to your board presidents. Really important to remember. It also reminds us when we say it that we're working, even with our board, we're working with a team of volunteers, and they are giving their time and their energy and their experience to us. Make it work for you, not them. That's a great way to lose volunteers. I don't really care what you need. I care what I need, and I need this job done a certain way. Now, do you need the job done a certain way? Yes. But there's a way to present that and a way to talk about that is very different. Instead of really like, I really need this done this way. It's really important. Listen, we've tried a couple different things. Here's what the outcome is I'm trying to get to. The easiest way I know to get to it is to do this job this way. Do you have any other ideas? We're engaging them and we're empowering them. If we just insist that everything is done a certain way, we are kind of destroying and undermining the program and the work it's supposed to do, because we're a ministry and we exist to help people that are struggling with loneliness, that want to connect more deeply to spirit, that want to live in a more profound and powerful way on the world, on the earth. And if we lose sight of that and we get caught in the day-to-day business of things, we kind of, why are we here? Ultimately, there are a lot of things that we can do without. We can do without an usher if all the ushers came down with COVID. We can do without a lot of things. What we can't do is forget why we exist. Forget that we serve people who have come in the doors because they're hurting, because they're ill, because someone they love is ill, because they need to connect with the holy to find some sense of hope in a world that's challenging. There is something, because they need the community, because they need something that lifts the way they think, because they have a tendency to think down into the world. We exist to help people live in a way that feels more comfortable and more satisfying, and to teach them how to think differently, feel differently, pray differently, walk differently, so that life is different. That's why we do all of this stuff that we do. And if we want to lose our volunteers, all we have to do is think about the fact that they are there in service to us rather than we are there in service to them. That will change your volunteer program quickly. Offer them nothing meaningful. And how you do that isn't to say that the job isn't meaningful, it's to say you don't tell them. You don't explain to them why it's meaningful. We need somebody to take pictures of great events. Cool, volunteer, awesome. End of story. No more conversation. Why does that job count for anything? Whatever the job is, filling in for the administrator, helping to clean the building. You know, helping to clean the building is a big one for me, and I've talked with you guys a little bit about this before. I believe that preparing sacred space before people come in is a critically important purpose in our community. That we want people to walk in the door and not notice a full trash can or find a stinky refrigerator full of old food is not just because we think cleanliness is a good thing, but because we want people to come into the building and feel this is a sacred space and be able to drop right into thinking about their holy life rather than noticing the trash can that didn't get emptied. So when we talk to people about keeping the temple, about caring for the temple, because this is a place we pray together, this is a place that people bring their grief, this is a place that people bring their joy. We bring people together in sacred union and we care for each other in this space. And when this space is clean, when everything is neat and orderly, that's what everyone experiences when they come in. So your work here, scrubbing bathrooms and cleaning countertops, may not seem very important to you when you do it, but it is one of the singular most important services you can offer to this community, because you make a difference in the sacredness of this space for every person who comes in. That is a very different narrative, a very different story from, guys, you know, nobody's taking the trash out. Come on, please, let's put up the signs. Hey guys, let's put up the signs that say your parents don't live here. How many of you have seen those in churches? I have. Take care of your stuff. Your parents don't live here. This is a great way to lose. I don't want to volunteer in a place that's going to treat me that way, that's going to feel that way. I want to feel like the work that I'm doing, even in those, you know, mowing the lawn, not a fun job in July. But when the lawn and the front of the building is beautiful, our children can play here. We're called to gather as community. This beauty that we create together, the planting of flowers and the caring for the garden and all of that, brings our community together in a different way. It sets the stage for what people will find when they walk through the front door. And I can't tell you how grateful I am, how much joy it personally brings me when I park my car and come to work. And I look around and go, this is such a beautiful place. It's a well cared for place. It speaks to sacredness. This kind of conversation will change the experience of your volunteers, even in the most menial jobs. Your work with volunteers is your sacred work. It is something that you give to them. You give them the understanding of the value of the job and what it does for the community. You give them appreciation for the value of their time. You give them the opportunity to learn things they don't know. You give, you give, you give. This is the nature of the work of all of the people who are on this screen. all of the people who are watching this recording. We are those who give into sacred space to create community and to provide people with an opportunity to uplift and change their lives. And the volunteer program that you lead is one of your most important one of your most important ministries. Much more important than many other things that you do. And I'll tell you why, because we want to believe that our pastoral counseling is really important because we make a difference in someone's life. True, one person, 1 hour at a time, maybe 5 a week, 6 a week, depending upon how many you can do, versus your volunteer program, which changes the state of your community for your entire community, changes the state of living and involvement for the people who volunteer, and changes the state of your life and your staff's life by making that easier for them. This program is critically important in a very powerful and positive way. I love this quote: volunteers are seldom paid, not because they're worthless, but because they're priceless. Volunteers care. They are the people with the heart willing to give without being paid. That tells you something about who they are. I want to talk for a minute about the volunteers who are a pain in the backside, because we all have them. There's going to be 1 or 2 who every time they hit your door, you're like, oh, what do you want now? What's wrong now? What has to happen now? Okay, didn't we just talk about this? Haven't we talked about this 17 times? Here's the thing. That person, for whatever reason, needs you to be their minister in that moment. There's something that person is not getting from you. Are there people who are just obnoxious and difficult to deal with? Yeah, there are. There are. And why are you doing what you do? Because people who are just obnoxious are generally traumatized. They're struggling with mental health. They have a lot going on in their life. There's a reason that they are who they are. And your job is just love them. I may have shared this with you before. When I came into ministry, I asked a friend of mine who had been a minister for a long time, what, if you could go back and like start all over, what do you wish someone had told you about going into ministry? And he said 2 things. All people ever want is love. That's really what your job is. Simply to love them for who they are and where they are. That's really what every single person on the planet is looking for. And the second thing is, if you took the 5 people who drive you crazy and put them on a bus and drove them to the next town south and put them in condos, 5 more would show up. So instead of driving off the ones that bother you, figure out how to love them. It all comes back to love. And it's probably the best advice I ever got. Because in the moments that those people came in who were frustrating the heck out of me, I could go back to my own heart and say, my job is simply to love you where you are. And that would allow me to step into a kinder, clearer space. I still had to learn how to speak what was true for me in that space. But the words came out differently because they were founded in love, and that was my job. That's the job I chose for myself. To be a place in the world where people could find love no matter what was going on for them. So I offer that to you as the greatest treasure I have to give you in the work that you do. It made the biggest difference for me. Working with volunteers is all about clarity, appreciation, empowerment, and Seva. So Seva is comes out of the Hindu faith. And the concept of Seva is sacred service. So when we talk about giving back to the community, that's one way of positioning your commentary with the people that you're working with. Another way is to speak about how you give back to the holy for the blessings in your life. What are you grateful for in your life? You're grateful for your health. You're grateful for your kids. You're grateful for your prosperity. You're grateful for, in my case, the beautiful mountain outside my front door I get to see every day. I'm grateful for many, many things. How do I express gratitude to the divine source? It's more than just that kind of awestruck sense that happens inside of me. How I express gratitude is by offering service into the world that gives other people things to be grateful for. So this concept of Seva is one that you can spend a lot of time looking up, reading about, and learning to talk about. To change the word from volunteering for the community to our sacred Seva, we have a Seva team. And that Seva team is involved in supporting various different aspects of our ministry. It means that you have to teach Seva. You have to teach what it is. And you have to first bring people to a sense of gratitude, like I just was suggesting with you. Take a minute. It's a great meditation. Go into your own heart. Notice something that you are really grateful for today. Something that you would say to yourself, thank God for that. Thank Spirit, thank the universe, however you name the God of your knowing. Thank that holy source for this gift that brings me so much joy. Now, if I told you you had an opportunity to actually do something in thanks, would you be interested in doing that? And that concept of Seva is, it is really, really valuable. It's a valuable gift because Seva doesn't have to be what you do in church. You can use the concept of Seva when you're out working in your yard, when you're tending to your gardens and creating beauty, when you're caring for your children, when you're not yelling at the spouse that you're angry with because, by golly, you are really thankful for that spouse, even in their bad moments. Then you can be in Seva and say, how can I help you with this? Rather than going into a disagreement. This is a really valuable spiritual concept that you can probably find across faiths in other words, in other names, but I have found it under the label of Seva. I have found the best explanations, and it's again something that I can apply in my life all the time. These things that we teach are about not just what happens in our church building, but how we instill in people ideas and values and concepts that they can use every day in their life. Our Seva program becomes something that people can use, that you can teach about, and people can use every day in their life, different than how we think about volunteering. It takes volunteering and turns it on its head and makes it a sacred act. And people are really interested in making their life experience more holy. Not just what they do in the building, but what they do when they leave the building. Leo Buscaglia is an amazing author. If you haven't read any of his work, I suggest that you do. He just is a gentleman who teaches profoundly on the subject of love. Too often we underestimate the power of a touch, a smile, a kind word, a listening ear, an honest compliment, or the smallest act of caring, all of which have the potential to turn a life around. This quote is the quote that I have always used with my leadership team, because this quote says your volunteering is about so much more than the counter that you cleaned, or the book that you put away, or the pamphlet that you handed out at the door. You don't understand what a difference you make by smiling, by the hug you shared with someone, by listening, by an honest compliment. Wow, that color looks beautiful on you. An honest compliment, or the smallest act of caring. And the smallest act of caring can be, hey, can I help you find a seat right now? We're really full. Would you like help? This is what our volunteer team does for the community. This is what you want your volunteer team to understand is their job, not the setting up fellowship. That's how they do their job. But this is their job. Their job in all their different capacities is to make your community a place where love is found in all the little ways that love can be found, because that's why people are showing up.